if your homestead or like where you live had an effect on guests when they came into your house, what would the effect be?
They want to give me money.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the best answer.
There's just a collection plate and then you just feel compelled to put money in it when they walk into your house. Oh man.
I don't know. The only time that anybody ever comes over is for D&D and recording. So my knee-jerk reaction was just like the compulsion for nudity. But I got Dan come over a lot and I don't need that in my life. So
yeah. And your brother.
And my brother. Nobody needs that in their lives. Shit. So the inability to be hungover.
How great would that be, right?
Oh, that would be really good.
No hangovers in this house.
That's topical today, let me tell you.
This is the most hangovered episode I've done in a long time. You know what I mean?
Me too. It's rough. What about you, Megan?
I was gonna go along the lines of like no illnesses in my home. Like it's just I would like if I could have an aura of my home. It is if you go in, you can't be sick. So if you're sick, you come to my house and you feel better. That's kind of like my
great
house of healing.
All right. I feel like a worse person now because both of yours
I want
is
money,
like
he
beneficial.
says.
Welcome to the It's a Mimic podcast, where you never know what you're going to get.
Welcome back to It's a Mimic, where you never know what you're going to get. Today, we're continuing our discussion on DM tips in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. I'm Kyle, and with me today are Adam and Megan, and this episode is called Environments, New Freak Unknown Unique Fun Zones.
In this episode of the It's a Mimic podcast, this panel of dungeon masters will be poking around where no mortals are meant to be and handling magic items that are best left to ancient experts and powerful mages.
Before we leave all natural reason behind, I've got a quick question. If you were out in the woods and you stumbled upon something that was clearly breaking the rules of physics and rationality, are you one of the people that walks right up and investigates it, or are you going to take a picture with your phone and fuck off back the way you came?
Oh, I have to touch it. I would touch it.
No, Megan. Let me describe. It's not what you think it is. It is a thing that breaks all physics and rationality. It's not something pretty to touch.
I'll touch it. I'm going to touch it. Answer still stands. I'll touch it.
Kyle?
Yeah, I'm probably the same. I would probably touch it too. Although I would probably get a stick and poke it first and then touch it.
Yeah, I'm the guy that's going to walk around 360 degrees and investigate it from every angle before I go lick it. That will be a full investigation, all five senses. So I guess the point is we're all fucked because there's a lot of shit we're going to talk about today that's dangerous.
Hey man, we come from because we're all from the age of like when we were kids running around in the forest, we would find weird things in the forest. Like I feel like nowadays.
Did you guys ever find the forest porn? Are you aware of this? I ran into this all the fucking time when I was a kid. And like, I'm not the only one. This is a phenomenon of like the 80s and 90s where if you would just go like dick around in the forest like we did when we were kids, you would find a hollow stump or like a little hollow area underneath roots or something. And there would inadvertently be a plastic bag chock full of porno magazines. You guys never ran into that?
It's a part of me that thinks that I did at some point, but I don't know if it's because you've painted such a lovely picture that I'm like, yeah, I have a memory of that happening. But like we did live behind a forest, so we were always in the forest. And like we found some weird shit in that forest. I would not be surprised if that phenomenon existed in my childhood.
Yeah, and it was always in there with with a pack of cigarettes. It always had like 3 cigarettes left, right? And there'd be a dead lighter and a broken like steak knife and shit. Like it was clearly a homeless person's stash. But yeah, I would run into that shit all the time. And like different woods, different forests. Well, I'd do this. We'd find it almost every time we went camping with the scouts.
We had like
Kyle looks so confused. To talk to Dave and Dan, like they'll tell you.
Yeah. We had an abandoned trailer in like the back of our forest, like in our forest, just in the middle, like, and you could not get it out because trees grew around it. You know what I mean? Like,
cool. And
like in that trailer, clearly there was folks that would live there at points in time in their childhood. So mom and dad would be like, don't go near the weird abandoned trailer, like in the forest. We always did, like, and there was some weird shit in there. Whenever there wasn't somebody in there, and we would go in and like look around. Like there was some stuff there that I'm pretty sure that us as children should not have seen. You know what I mean? This is like a Stand By Me horror film kind of.
Yeah.
I'm surprised I survived my childhood kind of moment. Like,
Oh, all right.
The one that stands out to me was there was a dryer behind my elementary school. There were a bunch of like forested areas. There was a dryer that was just out in the like middle of the bush. Like there were paths and trails. This thing was, 200 feet off the trail, and they had built it up and like covered it in dirt and stuff so that you couldn't see what it was until you were essentially on top of this little mound of dirt. And then the dryer was on its back and it would be like empty. The door was gone off of it and someone was using it as a toilet. And it was just this festering metal pit of human horror inside this. And like all the kids knew about it. And there was always a dare, sneak away from the schoolyard and go over to the toilet and like go to the dryer. And it was like this weird thing that, like, Kyle, what's the weirdest thing you've ever found in the woods?
I found a vacuum cleaner full of pine needles one time.
Someone vacuuming the forest?
Yeah, I guess so. Like, I can't explain it. It was way the fuck out there. Like, we were 45 minutes from the closest town. And the only thing I could think of is maybe someone had an RV out there and then something got into their van and then they vacuumed up a bunch of pine needles. But it was like just the bag you pulled off. It was just crammed full of pine needles.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Do you guys ever find did you ever see one of the staircases? Hello, Momo.
Staircases to nowhere?
Yeah. Apparently it's a phenomenon. I've never seen it, but I've known people who've claimed to have seen it, where you were out in the woods and there's a staircase that is clearly out of place. It looks relatively clean and it's a staircase to nowhere. And when you start to climb it, you just get this really like foreboding sense of bad, and then you walk back down. And the idea is that you just should never go near a freestanding staircase or a freestanding door you find out in the woods. And apparently people see this all over like the world. When you go out there into the wilderness, but particularly forests and heavily like vegetated areas, then you will find these things.
Yep. There was a weird staircase in the forest that I grew up in.
See,
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
you go.
And it was like one of those, like, it was almost like one of those, like, concrete, like a concrete thing that just got placed there and for
Yeah.
no reason. Like, and it just existed.
Did you play on it?
We would sit on it. It would be kind of like their little, like, where our little hideout was in the middle, we would sit around on it. And maybe that's why this is why I'm cursed. I'm cursed. I knew it.
It was the staircase.
It's all coming together now, guys. This is why I'm cursed. All right, I'm gonna get rid of my cat. Just give me a second.
I've heard of that phenomenon thing of like stairs in the middle of the forest, but I don't know. I've never seen one. And I always kind of assumed that it was people that heard about the phenomenon and then they're like, hey, wouldn't it be funny if we went and built a staircase out in the forest to freak some people out?
I went to a party one time, like, God, 15 years ago, and there was some guy that was talking about it. It was the first I ever heard about it, but he had a picture on his phone, but it was one of those old like flip phones, so it was like a really grainy, shitty picture. So it was authentic enough. Nobody had Photoshop or anything back then, but like, so I've seen a picture of it, but it's what made me ask the question originally, like, would you go up and investigate it? Because he's like, yeah, it made me feel weird, so I fucked off. And I'm like, well, fair enough. And then years later, I heard stories about it, and I'm like, okay, this is apparently a fucking thing. So
I guess I just grew up in the wrong forests.
What kind of boring ass woods were you growing up in?
I know, like, what kind of childhood did you have? You don't have weird shit in your forest, like.
One full of whimsy.
I wonder if this is a Canadian thing too, because of how forested we are. Like, it'd be interesting to see if these phenomenons exist in other places.
I'm curious to know now if any of the listeners have ever run into one of these. Like, okay, like write in, give us a comment. What's the weirdest shit you found out in the woods, out in the wilderness?
Yeah.
And if it's a dead body, we will report you.
The ones that terrify me are the people that have the weird supernatural-ish or like the unexplained encounters on the ocean. Nah, fuck it. That scares the shit out of me.
Yeah. Waters never traverse.
No.
All right. Before we pop off on any more of this, let's meander our way into an info break.
We previously covered quite a bit in our discussion on Dungeon Master tips in 5th edition. For all of those episodes and more, you can follow or subscribe at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and dozens of other podcast apps. And if you'd like to support us, you can donate through the website, check out our store, or join our Patreon and get access to other episodes and series. If you'd like to pay for some ad space on It's a Mimic or just send a shout out to a friend, please reach out to us through our email and website that are listed in the show notes below.
This week on the It's a Mimic campaign builder, Tyler and I sit down to discuss what happens when you start off Tier 3 after losing your home base, your hometown, and all your allies. How is a dungeon master supposed to create dynamic encounters and tell a story based around a late game party being homeless? But for now, let's jump back into the episode.
When your earliest memories are of growing up in the Feywild, things like time-warping mushrooms, mind-bending fruit, and giant tabby cats seem far less whimsical and way more, could we please just move to the material plane so I can have a scrap of a normal childhood? This is the opening quote to Tesh's Cauldron of Everything's section on supernatural regions. So what is a supernatural region? Well, these are areas on the material plane that have been warped on a fundamental level by some kind of traumatic event. It is up to you whether that be from a presence of a powerful otherworldly entity, a magical event of cataclysmic proportions, or a tragic event whose echoes reach out across space and time. These areas can be as large as an entire ocean or small enough to fit on the head of a pin. What does matter is that in these places, the veil between the planes has become so thin that some of the magic of these other places has begun leaching out and begun infecting the very anima of the land itself, turning it into a kind of window of sorts to another reality. And with the right push, the window can be opened just a little bit. Things found in the area, whether that be buildings, people, plants, or animals, may remain unaffected, while a deeper, more primal transformation has taken place. Brief encounters and certain effects as players cross the area will help reinforce whatever particular theme may be present. Tesh's Cauldron of Everything has a bunch of samples breaking down what each of these particular triggers might look like, along with some random effect tables. General triggers you might use when playing around with some of these environments or coming up with your own are a party entering the area for a first time, a creature falling to under 50% health, the casting of a first level and up spell, or activating a magic item, doing something that might attract undue attention from creatures that would be negative to the original plane, or spending any significant amount of time in an area. So let's get into some of these. Let's roll initiative to see who's going first. There goes my die.
3.
11. Oh, me.
Oh, Megan.
All right. Well, I'm going to start off with a great one since we talked about our traumatic haunted forest childhoods. I'm going to talk about haunted places, which you can find in Tashes, as we've been talking about. So haunted regions are locations where great horrors have occurred, such as mass killings or just like awful deeds as a whole. I my mind goes straight to like cult rituals and sacrifices and things like that, but it could be a simple thing, like in my mind, it could be a simple thing like a character betrayal, or like just a place where a heightened piece of emotion occurred, right? These areas are thought to house those raw and terrible emotions and can be like places where ghosts roam and other things like that, right? Ghouls and all that kind of stuff. So some things to kind of heighten the haunted feel of these areas. So some of the effects that can happen are creatures can gain the frightened effect, or certain creatures are unable to see their surroundings clearly. So that can be done in my mind with like fog, darkness, all those kinds of things, right? Also, if a creature finds themselves alone, in a weird haunted area, you can pop off an effect. And then another one is like things and weird things happening during certain times. So like at midnight or noon or 3 a.m. or what have you, like certain time frames, things can pop off, right? And then as mentioned before, of course, if you're in these areas, like if a ghost appears and stuff like that, you can pop off one of these regional effects. So if any of those things happen while you're in a forest, obviously in the book, there's a bunch of random tables that you can roll on for effects that can pop off if you were to, in a haunted area, find yourself alone, have a weird time frame, or what have you as a DM, make those choices. Some of the random ones that I enjoyed, which was if you roll 16 to 20, all bright light weakens to dim for 24 hours. Any other sources of light, like candles, don't shine light at all. So I even imagine that if you have a dancing lights cantrip up, those will dim. If your torch is up, that will dim. And or if you haven't lit it yet and you try to light it, it will light, but it won't emit light in my mind. So
I also like the idea of doing the old horror trope where it just blows out.
Yeah, like the little gust of wind goes.
Yeah.
And yeah. If you roll 56 to 60, if you die in the lands, your body rapidly decomposes and becomes a skeleton for 1d10 minutes after dying, which I think is intense for just being in a little haunted forest or a little haunted house. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Watching you go through all the rapid stages of decay.
yeah. And that would be a fun thing to kind of describe for like the horror aspect of things, is watching someone's body quickly decompose, like go through all of the phases all at once and being able to describe what that kind of looks like, right?
I like the idea of it being kind of out of time too. So you'll see like bugs come and you'll see them like start to eat away, but they're coming so fast and flitting away.
Yeah.
Like you're watching something in fast forward.
Oh, it's one of those time lapse ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gross. And one of the other ones that I really liked is if you roll a 56, if you roll an 86 to 90, all healing done from spells leaves scars on your character. So we homebrew that if you die and come back to life, or like do your death saves and you end up living again, you get a scar. That's what we do. But I thought this one was interesting because it's any healing done, not even just like from death, any healing, because it's almost like the healing doesn't operate the way it normally should, and your body is slowly knitting itself, which means you're going to end up with a scar as opposed to like quick healing, right? It kind of adds a little bit of that survival aspect to it, and that would be fun to describe, especially if you have like a healer who just like pops off the healing word just to top everyone's health up. You can, as a DM, you can describe, okay, you look down at your arm where the ghoul or ghast or creature scratched you, and you now have a permanent scar. It's healed and it feels fine, but you got a bit of an itch because that scar is still there, right?
Yeah.
So
I love it.
That's haunted places. Do you find those inspiring?
Yeah.
Honestly, yes. I'm always putting you guys in haunted areas. I mean,
Always.
you've been fighting against undead for campaigns now, right? And the overarching plot of our world is healing works different and resurrection works differently, and the undead are everywhere. And so I love this kind of shit, and I would have liked to have had access to this table to cherry pick certain ones to be able to use, and have a status quo when I started this campaign. So I quite like this.
Yeah.
All
I like the idea of having like choosing one or two, and then that's just the consistent, if we're in a haunted space, this will always happen. So it's almost like your characters have that, they know how to handle the issues now a little bit better, and you can kind of strengthen them and work on them, right?
Yeah, if you're on desecrated ground, you can know it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. Do you guys have any inspirations for how you want to use these?
I honestly, for me, this is where it's perfect haunted house stuff. I mean, I'm gonna litter this through Barovia because that makes a lot of sense, but even in Death House and the House of Lament from Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, anything that's, how many graveyards do you end up in? How many sunken ships do you run across in Ghost of Saltmarsh? Like, wherever a skeleton pops up, I would have one of these effects potentially be in a 10-foot radius of the area, right? So, or maybe, oh, you know what? If you've got a group of players that are consistently using Speak with Dead,
Yeah.
every time they do that, it kicks off one of these things in a 60-foot radius that hangs around for the next 13 days or something, right?
Okay.
So whenever you pierce the veil in some way, the environment becomes weak. Life becomes corrupted. That kind of shit.
It's hardcore mode right there.
Well, I mean, go big, go home.
Yeah. I guess. Megan, do you have anything specifically you'd use this for?
I maybe it's just because I do the undead series. It just seems like everything is haunted. I don't understand why we're talking about things not being haunted, right?
Yeah.
There's undead things everywhere. But no, I really, really enjoyed the trigger of when you find yourself alone in one of these areas. And I think that that's a really good like pip for any DM to be like, haunted places are a great place to separate your party. And like when they want to split the party, let them and give them reasons to separate the party, because it's such a great pip that when they're alone, they have a psychosis moment, right?
Yeah. Okay, so when I was a kid, I went to the Winchester Mansion. Do you guys know anything about it?
Yeah,
no,
man.
but that's wild. I know about it. I haven't been there. That's wild. That's really
And it is crazy. Yeah. So for anybody who doesn't know, it's the wife of the guy who came up with Winchester rifles. After he died, she was worried that the ghosts of everybody that were killed by his rifles were going to start haunting her. So she built this whole mansion, and it has a bunch of dead ends, rooms with secret entrances and exits, like stuff behind the mirrors, all to kind of confuse the ghosts so she wouldn't find them. And that's how I kind of imagine these haunted zones, like something not just undead are there, right? It's something incredibly traumatic, like change, like it put a psychic kind of presence on the land. So what I would love to do with this is have them go around a Winchester style mansion. And I think it would be a great way to like separate them, right? Like you walk into a room, then all of a sudden a door shuts behind one of the party, and now they're alone in this part of the house. And the whole goal is to try to rescue the woman who's in the house before these ghosts can get to her.
And the walls keep closing and the hallways keep appearing and
Staircases to nowhere, creepy, weird staircases, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we're down in the cellar. There is no cellar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or like a combination of that and mixed with the haunted mansion from Disneyland.
The only thing I would say is you've got to shut down psychic communication, right? Message has a range on it that is going to cover the whole house, so you have to shut that shit down. Like anytime you try to use it, you just hear static, right?
Mm. Or it becomes like a game of telephone, right? So you'll get the message, but it'll be warped a little bit because it'll have gone through a bunch of ghosts who add their own little echo.
Yeah, I like that. I think you were next, Kyle.
I am next. Trying to backseat DM here.
Sorry, I didn't hear what you rolled, so I'm like, is it my turn?
Yeah, no, it's me. So I'm doing the Far Realm. So the Far Realm is a place of madness, home of aberrations, and power so terrible and corrupting, it is capable of twisting even the strongest minds into something strange and unrecognizable. It is a place that lies beyond the plains and even beyond the stars themselves, where eldritch horrors await, entities that threaten the existence of all other life everywhere. It's a place governed by an entirely different set of rules and its own way of thinking that is beyond the ken of mortals. It's generally a subtle evil, one that drips through tears in the fabric of reality, or as intrusive thoughts that lead slowly but unerringly down new paths. Triggers in one of these places might include a warlock with a great old one patron, rolling a 1 or a 20 on a ability check, attack roll, or saving throw, a party taking a rest within the area, or if someone spends 30 or more minutes reading an eldritch tome written by someone who was in some way touched by the Far Realm. Some of the fun ones on the D100 table that they give us are a structure whispers faintly. Creatures that can hear it must succeed on a DC 12 wisdom saving throw or be charmed. While they're charmed in this way, the creature has to move towards the source of the whispering, avoiding obvious hazards. And when it reaches the source, it becomes incapacitated. The creature then can repeat the saving throw when it takes damage or at the end of every hour, which I thought was kind of interesting, ending itself on a success. If you roll a 64 to 72 for the next 2d10 hours, creatures in the area find themselves covering the same ground over and over again, unable to leave, during which time they make no progress. So basically just going around in a circle. Once the effect ends, each creature must succeed on a DC 10 con save or take 1 level of exhaustion. Rolling a 96 to 100, we'll have a tear in reality appear that acts similar to the gate spell, linking this location with another random plane of existence for 2d10 plus 2 hours. This tear will travel through the Far Realm. So I kind of imagine it like the warp from Warhammer. And any creature that enters the rift takes 10d10 psychic damage from horrors they witnessed on the journey through before appearing in the closest unoccupied space to the rift on the new plane. What do you guys have for inspiration for this one? Or do you want me to go first?
I don't know. I love this. This is I love the cosmic horror stuff. The Far Realm shit is my fucking jam. Although
hell yeah,
we covered this quite in depth on the campaign builder episode with a bunch of aberrations and stuff. And I'm always about just like tentacles bursting out of fucking nowhere for no reason and body horror, like people's eyeballs start melting, but they can still see through them as they like slide down their bodies. And just like weird nonsense, right? Like I'm all about that kind of just gnarly shit. These Far Realm effects are really fun and really interesting. I like them to be even weirder. The one thing I will say though, that one that you had about they can't leave the region, they're just retracing the steps over and over.
Yeah.
One of the things about Minotaurs is they always know where they are and where they've been. Like they can just remember layouts of places that they've been before. This would fuck with a Minotaur player who's been like relying on that, which I think is really fun.
I love that
Yeah.
you mentioned Minotaur because like this like using what like a Farscape thing I would do just screams weird labyrinth to me.
Yeah.
Like
Oh yeah.
like if you're gonna do like an enchanted labyrinth that they have to solve before they get to like the MacGuffin or wherever they're traveling, or just end up in a forested area that feels and looks like a labyrinth, right? And so like I just laughed when he said Minotaur because I'm like, of course I'd throw a Minotaur inside this weird creepy landscape of like. But I think it's like a good piece too, right? Because a lot of DMs who do labyrinths or mazes or something just for that exploration pillar, like attaching it to like a region with these kinds of abilities would make it that much treacherous. So this would be for like your higher leveled parties that are now going to be dealing with these things. Because the fact that if you roll that one that you were mentioning, where like not rolled, like one of the triggers is that if they rest here, something will trigger. So it's like even when you're resting, you can't rest, right?
Yeah.
Like something may happen, which again adds to the severity of the situation. So depending on the level of your party, I would make a labyrinth with these pips as options.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's great. Yeah, for me, I think this episode actually came along at like the perfect time because I have a cult in my homebrew that I'm working with right now.
Oh, you're
Or
going to say
basically-
your personal life.
Yeah. Well, you know, everybody's got to have hobbies. Yeah, no, so I have a far realm cult that's in my game right now, and they're basically going around stealing books from bookstores and then burning down the bookstores to cover their tracks. And so the party right now is currently like tracing them back to their hideout kind of thing. And I'm gonna have the hideout be like emptied out real quick, but they're leaving behind this far realm kind of space because inside it they've just done so many rituals towards the far realm that it's kind of warped the room in itself. Yeah, there's another one where it's something appears or like all the roots on trees turn to tentacles and everything. So I think that would be really fun to
That's
act
cool.
with as well.
Yeah. Neat.
Adam, what you got?
So I'm going to talk for a second about Blessed Radiance. And Blessed Radiance is whenever the upper planes infuse an area with blessings of some sort. There's not much more information on it than that, except the fact that it gives us a handful of examples, like of what would trigger one of these radiance effects in these areas. But it just says the upper planes touch this region. In my head, this is where an angel has touched down, or a mass blessing has been given, or there used to be a temple here, or one of the gods walked the earth, and this is where they did the thing they came here to do. Right? So this is very godly. Keep in mind, however, not all gods are good, and Blessed Radiance could be for evil gods or warmongering gods or whatnot as well. So, however, the upper planes specifically tends to align with good, but like you can twist this to be a lower planes thing too. The things that triggered is if somebody is in an area where there's been some sort of like historically divine intervention, then a player succeeds on a save against undead or fiends while they're here, or someone is a target of a beneficial third level cleric or paladin spell, if a player crits against a fiend or undead, or a player has an epiphany while doing good or undermining evil, then one of the effects kicks off. You can clearly adapt that depending on what kind of god that you want, right? But those are kind of the things that they're looking at. So instead of me selecting the ones that I like the best, I'm going to grab percentile dice and roll, and I'm going to roll 3 times, and each one of us is going to get a blessing of some sort. So I'm going to go in reverse alphabetical order, so I go last. Megan, you're up.
What is my blessing?
I rolled a 34. One simple or martial weapon that is non-magical and carried by you in this region gains the properties of a mace of disruption for 24 hours.
I hit stuff.
You hit stuff. That is the
hit
most
stuff.
Megan thing. Kyle, you got a 90.
All right.
An angelic voice rings throughout the region. Each creature there must succeed on a DC 15 wisdom saving throw or perform the grovel option of the command spell.
My god.
And then for me, I rolled a 53. Aberrations, fiends, and undead in the region give off a crimson glow for 1 minute. The creatures shed dim light in a 10-foot radius. Attacks against them have advantage if the attacker can see them, and the creatures can't benefit from being invisible. So These are all fun, interesting, divine options. I like this. I think that this is not going to come up that often in most campaigns, but when it does, it would be very memorable and flavorful.
Yeah. Like, I feel like this is definitely going to be attached to whatever religious character is in your group, right? So like you visit their church or you visit their hometown and like all these things, nice things start happening, and it kind of like reboosts that character's attachment to their religion. Because like I found like a lot of the characters that I've played, especially my paladins, end up the world sucks and it doesn't really good things don't happen. So it's kind of like a good, almost like a refresher to put in your campaign, like somewhere in the middle after a big heavy thing has happened, right? Like Adam, like when we do have deaths of like party deaths, we'll usually have like an episode of rest and mourning and all those kinds of things. Like this would be a good area that people find them in to have that kind of more of a mental refresher is what I would do. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like you bury them in it, and it's one of these effects comes by.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
you were to use the spell ceremony in one of these areas, which has like a bunch of different kinds of effects depending on the kind of ceremony you're doing, like performing weddings or funerals or unions of ideals or healing people, like there should be something cool that pops off every time you do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good way to use it. Yeah. Cool.
All right, let's move on to round 2.
Same initiative or are we rolling?
Let's roll again.
Ote.
16.
12.
I got an 11.
I get to go
Adam.
again. Well, it was fun the first time. It's going to be less fun now because we've gone from Blessed Radiance to the Infested. Megan, this one's for you. This is all about when insects become too populous for a region. We're talking mass migrations with wild population booms or magical manipulations that have summoned these insects, or there's supernatural growth here, or just interbreeding with otherworldly species, and now your bugs do weirder shit. So when that happens, you get to roll on a table. It's another percentile dice table, but there are some suggestions for when this triggers. For example, when webs, cocoons, hives, anthills, and or other insect dwellings are disturbed, when someone attacks an insect swarm or a small or larger insect in the region, or when a creature begins a short or long rest. Yay, fuck you, players. So,
Oh, Lord.
we're going to go in alphabetical order, I guess, this time so that we can end on Megan's horror.
Great.
That's a good place to be. So for me, I rolled a 38, which says that the region is choked with wispy webbing, which acts as difficult terrain. Pretty straightforward. I think that one's actually the most boring on the list. Kyle? 77. I always roll high for you for some reason. One random creature in the region must succeed on a DC 16 con save, or it acquires a ravenous silverfish infestation among its gear.
Ew.
The infestation is discovered the next time the creature finishes a short or long rest. If the creature has any paper material, the silverfish destroy one random book or other paper item that isn't magical. So your
Oh my
scrolls are
God.
safe,
Yeah.
but your journal isn't.
Well, at least I won't have to worry about dead skin cells on me.
Yeah.
All of my old memories, though, in my 1999 journal.
No, my
Megan,
teen angst.
I rolled a 52. A massive bloated maggot emerges from the ground within 10 feet of the party and bursts, covering the ground with ichor in a 10-foot square centered on it. The region is affected by the grease spell for 1 minute.
Ew.
I like this if you're walking through tunnels, you're underground, and these maggots are coming into the ceiling and just like bursting and dripping down onto the floor.
The world's
Maggot.
worst fireworks.
Maggots dripping. Like,
Yeah.
gross.
I feel like the exploding part is even worse.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of shit on this one. Like there's bioluminescence, there's buzzing, there's discarded like carcasses and exoskeletons that you got to crunch across. Like there's
Yeah.
all sorts of just horrible shit in this.
This table and using this kind of regional kind of stuff would be good for a random encounter. Like it's easy enough, it's simple enough, easy enough to deal with as a group. Like it could just be a little thing to throw in there to like give yourself as a DM time to find something else to do.
The other thing too is I picture this for the Underdark all over the place around Drow with the spiders and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, great options in here.
Interesting. Yeah. Good for if you're going through like a forest too, like a really deep, dark forest.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just trying to find ways to pad it out.
Yeah. Or even like fields, right? Like when you're crossing farmland, I imagine that there would be infestations of bugs everywhere, right? Because of like the growth and the food and
The random encounter is you step on
Yeah.
a fucking wasp nest, right? Like,
yeah.
cool.
Nice.
Terrible.
Love it. All right, I'm going to talk about the psychic resonance. I don't know why that word was hard for me just now, but it was. So these are areas where magic is a little bit weird and tampered with due to it basically being surrounded or immersed in psionic power, or like, let's say there's just creatures fucking around with psionic abilities in this area. Things that can pop off, the effects that can happen in these regions are things like creatures having big emotions. So a big traumatic thing happens, or like even if a very solid positive thing happens, like any kind of large emotion, or even taking psychic damage that is greater than your con score. So I guess that bodes the ability for someone to be able to handle any kind of psychic damage, as well as it could be as simple as someone becoming charmed or frightened in these areas can pop off an effect. Or if someone talks through telepathy, which, let's be real, all parties tend to do. There's always somebody that has message. There's always somebody that has like a weird ability to talk to you through your brain minds. So I find that this is going to be the one that would pop off and affect the most in my experience with the parties I've played with anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah. So some of the cool things that can happen if one of those things kind of triggers. So a 25 to 34 roll, headaches and nosebleeds. And it also even gives them disadvantage on wisdom save throws. So it's kind of like that process of like, have you ever tried to concentrate when you have a headache? You know what I mean? So it kind of just like goes hand in hand that they suck at their wisdom saves because they have a headache or have a nosebleed going on.
That is me right now.
Yeah. I mean, trying so hard to concentrate. If you roll 65 to 70, one random creature in the region can hear whispering in their mind. This is thought to be the faint thoughts of all the other creatures around them, and actually gives them advantage on wisdom checks for 1 hour. So it's almost like they can tap into everything that's happening around them for a short period of time. So, and I feel like that one can be popped off if someone tries to speak with telepathy. All of a sudden you hear everyone's voices for like 1 hour, and then it's extremely loud. If you do an 83 to 88 for 1 minute on a 20 count, you must make a DC 15 intelligence save or take 2d6 psychic damage. I can see this one happening if your character has been alone for too long, kind of like a pip that happened with the haunted areas. Like, I feel like you can use that as an option. Or it can be like, again, having big emotions or having a headache or trying to, again, talk through telepathy. All of a sudden, you take 2d6 psychic damage because you're trying too hard to tap into it. It's almost like you're not supposed to. You know what I mean?
That's 2d6 for 10 consecutive rounds.
Yeah.
You got to make the save against that. That's rough, because who's good at intelligence saves? Wizards and artificers. That's it.
That's it. Yeah.
Interesting.
It's a DC 50, and it's a DC 15, which is
that's nothing to laugh at, right?
So
interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any inspirations for how you would use this in a game, or how this would be created? I guess in an area.
I imagine these popping off in like a wizard's tower, or like somewhere where there's just a lot of magic happening and there's a lot of confusion in the land.
I was gonna drop all of this in the Feywild.
Yeah.
I would have said this is like what happens when you torture a crystal dragon. Like it's their pain emanating out kind of thing.
Yeah, a lot of the gem dragons have psychic shit, so that makes sense, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
All right. I guess we're moving on to me. Mirror zone. So no one is really sure how these mirror zones appear. Some think it's an artifact of when planar and material energies meet. It's creating a place of reflection. Some an incursion from the theorized mirror of planes, which I guess is something they just made up for this. The plane of mirrors has popped up in previous editions. It's just not it's technically one of those ones like the plane of dreams, and there's a few that are out there that are just used as almost like pocket dimensions or alternate realities for one adventure at a time. But it can be really neat to interact with them on some level. The idea that there is, if you pass through a mirror, there's a whole other world there, right? Like that's wild. Okay, interesting. So this is also where others believe that powerful magic governing transition, protection, or divination had unexpected results. So I guess a ritual going wrong or something like that. Whatever the creation, though, it is a place where creatures, objects, and energies reflects, refracts, duplicates, or is transported elsewhere. Some triggers include a creature shattering a mirror, if someone uses any kind of teleportation magic, the appearance of an illusion, or if one creature impersonates another. Some of the things off the random tables. So 19 to 24 is creatures in the regions don't cast reflections. Insight checks made against them have disadvantage, and disadvantage on persuasion checks made against anyone who notices their lack of reflection. When they leave the region, creatures regain their reflection and the effect ends. 71 to 76 is for the next 24 hours. When anyone in the region hits with an attack roll and deals damage, the attacker must succeed on a DC 13 charisma saving throw or take force damage equal to half the damage dealt. Finally, 95 to 100, which is, I think, probably the funnest one, is a duplicate of a random creature appears. The duplicate is identical to the original in every respect, same stats, same equipment, same appearance, and its only goal is to kill the original. If the duplicate dies, it and all the equipment it's carrying is shatters into shards of mirror. If it fails to kill the original creature within 1 hour, it disappears.
Ooh, creepy.
That's really creepy.
That's cool.
Those are the art for this in the book is really cool too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This one particularly.
I would just do a campaign related to that last pip, like a whole campaign related to that.
Well, it's funny. I just used a mirror zone when I was dealing with Mieka because she ends up having to go back to Maryland and we end up splitting the D&D party and she returns. And although I guess we're done doing that later this year, she's just going to join permanently, which is fun.
Yep.
But she ended up in an area where she got like magically bamfed into it against her will. And she found herself in a tower where she wasn't able to leave and she was trapped in there with a vampire. But the vampire was there as a like NPC, not as an enemy. And the vampire was sitting there talking to her and trying to give her information. He's like, I'm a guardian of this place because I keep the greater evil at bay, but I'm also a prisoner. I can't leave. And it turns out that every time he tries to leave, he opens a door and there's nothing there. What was actually there was a mirror. He just can't see his own reflection. Mieka figured it out that if she did a handful of things, her reflection and her, they would change places. And anybody else that was also in the reflection would change places with her. Right. And so that's how they managed to get out of the mirror zone. But the vampire's trapped because he can't see his reflection to change places.
Interesting.
So it was this cool, great big like prison that was created by a powerful mage. So
neat.
What's the greater power that he's protecting everybody from?
Literally the avatar of an anti-god that is trapped, frozen in time, fighting the harbinger of the goddess of death.
Badass.
Yeah.
Gasp.
It was right where Megan's character died at the end of the last campaign.
Yeah.
All right.
We love a good character death from a higher power, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sucks when it's from a lower power. No one wants to get killed by a fucking zombie or a giant frog. Fuck that.
That's fair.
Arrow to the knee from a goblin takes you out. Not quite the same satisfying.
Yeah, it's not the same thing.
Well, like we'll never be the
same. Mirror goblin.
You can never financially recover from this. Oh Lord.
Megan, do you have any inspiration for this?
Honestly, I was gonna go like more along with the name of it because as soon as we talked about it, it also like fits very well. Is I would just do a circus and have like a fun house of mirrors where a whole bunch of weird shit happens, and it's just a couple of the mirrors are having these effects and pips and pops off, especially like because they'll try and transport out of it if they get lost, or like try and like teleport or use dimension doors and things like that to get out of these places, and that will work. You know what I mean? Like it's a good place to trap your players and have some fun.
Also, I love
it. Sounds like it
would be mirrors because you go to smash it and like you swing back to hit it and your mace goes right fucking through it and you end up falling through the mirror into the mirror zone. Or it like you can shoot through it, but only magic can go through it. Everything else, it's impenetrable. It can't be destroyed at all. It's just this mirror that you can shoot magic missile through, shit like that. Or it's a portal to the mirror behind you, so you shoot and you end up shooting yourself in the back, shit like that. Like
I was just thinking that exact same thing.
Yeah.
With a mace, right? Like you swing it through and then it just smokes you in the back of the head.
Oh my god.
And then you face plant against the mirror in front of you.
All right, I'm gonna hit with my longbow. I roll my attack. Great. Also, what's your AC?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, my idea was some powerful magic user in the area is asleep and basically can't wake up. So their dreams are leaking into reality, but it's that weird, slightly off reality, that dreamy sort of reality. So there's like your party, but they're all kind of slightly different. And you go in one door expecting to find one thing, but it's the dream version of it. And then you got to it's almost like a maze, finding your way between the dreams and the reality. And you got to find the magic user and wake them up.
That'd be
And
good for a sleeping beholder too.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Oh, you know what would be like? We're all thinking mirrors and stuff right now, but could you imagine like looking down in a small like lake, and you're looking over the edge of the rowboat, and your reflection reaches up, grabs you, and drags you into the water?
I was just thinking like small puddles and stuff, like to your point, like the layer of a beholder where it's sleeping, and there's just these little pools of water on the ground, strategically placed in places where you would have to see your reflection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I like
Cool.
that. All right, let's move on to round 3. So
All right.
roll again.
2.
9.
I also got a 9.
Roll again.
All right, you're going down.
15.
18.
God damn it, Kyle.
Yes.
Cool. You can go first, I guess. That's fine.
All right. So the one I got for this is Unravelling Magical Effects. So something is wrong with the magic in the area. Spells don't work as they should, with the results potentially becoming unpredictable and dangerous. Such places are what happens when magic itself has been damaged or corrupted, and whether that be the aftermath of a battle between magical titans, a potent artifact being destroyed, or a powerful ritual either having gone wrong or right is up to you. Or, it got disrupted halfway through and just release magic everywhere. Some of the things that might trigger a reaction in this area are charges from a magical item being used, spell of first level or higher being cast, or a creature with a strong attachment to magic of a challenge rating of 5 or higher dying. Some of the effects might be that 1 to 5, all magic items except for artifacts in the region temporarily lose their magical properties for 1 hour, while leaving a creature's attunement to such item unaffected. 46 to 50 is the Flaming Sphere spell with a spell save DC of 15, spontaneously activates in an unoccupied space within 5 feet of the party. And on initiative count 20, losing all ties, the sphere moves 30 feet towards the nearest creature, with the sphere vanishing after 1 minute. I think that sounds hilarious, and I would definitely have that randomly happen, quote unquote. Or 66 to 70 is one random creature in the region crackles and sparks with light for 1 hour. For the duration, the creature magically sheds light in a bright light in a 10-foot radius and dim light for an additional 10 feet. In addition to that, any creature it touches, requiring an unarmed strike, if the target is unwilling, takes 1d6 force damage. So, I guess just static electricity is built up.
Is this just a wild magic table without the wild magic sorcerer barbarian?
Yeah, it feels kind of that way. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. But I mean, I guess it's supposed to be on a more epic scale.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right?
I would almost want to use this, my inspiration for this would be, I would use it if I had like a wizard or someone with had a lot of magic powers, died in not died dead, even if they were brought back or stabilized, but anytime they die in battle, something like this would pop off because their magic would just exist. It still exists, right? Especially if they restabilize. I feel like there's gonna be a burst of uncontrollable magic that just happens because this wizard died and came back to life, right? And that gives your character a little bit more spice to them every time they come back, kind of thing.
When you finish your campaign, you've killed the big bad evil guy, and you're running away. You have the Indiana Jones moments of trying to escape his temple as it comes down around you or whatever that shit is. This stuff should be popping off on initiative count 20 at the same time. As you're trying to leave, the magic here is now weakened because the big bad evil guy died. When you're trying to escape Strahd's castle or the Tomb of Annihilation or whatever it is, you've won. It's time to leave, but there's one more encounter, and that's get the fuck out. And so I think this shit should be popping off. I'd be rolling on this table frequently.
Yeah. I see it also for like anytime high level dragon or anything. Basically anything that has layer actions, this is gonna take
Have an
effect
effect.
in that layer, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like I imagine stuff that has layer actions, they're so powerful that in a sense they kind of warp the reality around them. And so now the thing that's holding that new reality together is gone. So it's reality trying to reassert itself over the magic. So when you kill a dragon, its cave is gonna start crumbling and fall to the ground, kind of thing.
I'm also gonna say it doesn't necessarily have to be unraveling magic. It could be too potent. Like you guys familiar with the idea of ley lines?
Yeah.
The idea of there are magical lines across the universe that literally make a giant weave, and wherever they meet, these are points of potent magic.
Mhm.
I would have a lot of these effects hit because some of them are like, I think the 1 to 5 is something about losing magical properties on shit, right? So some of them is very much like negative, but some of them are positive too. Like there's just spells going off and crazy shit is happening as well. And I think that would be a place where I would look at this table as well.
Neato.
Yeah.
All right, well, I believe I am next, even though Kaya usurped my high roll. That's fine. I'm going to talk about the Enchanted Springs. So this area is just exactly as it sounds. This is magical and enchanted pools of water that have magic abilities. No one is quite sure where it comes from. So I feel as a DM, you can be creative with where that comes from. However, some waters are pure and do great things, and some are tainted. So, or just, bad waters.
We do love a good taint. Yeah.
We love a good taint in this group. Yeah. Creatures don't necessarily have to drink the waters. They can simply take a bath or even run their hands through it or dip a toe in it. You know what I mean? Like it could be any of the above, right? This is the DM's dream and nightmare, right? That a player is always going to be cautious about it. Like touch the water, don't touch the water. It's like the door conundrum. There's a door in front of you. It takes us 40 minutes to figure out how to open it, right? You know what I mean? Like now put a pool of water in the middle of nowhere. Like are they going to touch it? Do they not touch it? Like, or like make it very obvious, like it's hot springs, right? So they think that it's safe. So they just run right through them, right? Like it's going to be one way or the other. You know what I mean?
One of my favorite things I ever did was give my players in a desert a lagoon, but everything that was around the lagoon was it was an oasis rather, was just bright blue.
Yeah.
I didn't bother to explain, it was just blue. None of them wanted to touch the water. It scared the shit out of them, and they just kept dealing with their thirst.
Yep, because we didn't want to touch the water.
Yep.
But yeah. So here are a few of the effects that can happen. They're of course in a book. It's a D12 table, so it's a little bit of a smaller list now. But some of the ones that I thought were funny. If you roll 2, bathing in the spring makes a creature glow with golden feathers. If not wearing armor, this gives the creature a +1 to their AC for 1d4 days. So absolutely glowing. You know what I mean? Like that's the hot springs just making you look nice and fresh. Like
Did something happen? You have an unusual glow about you.
you're like, yeah, you've got a glow or you're glowing. Yeah.
I imagine that 1 AC is because like they're too beautiful. I can't hit them.
I can't hit them. It's just so, or they're just so fucking bright. That's the other thing is like, cause they glow, right? Like with golden, I can imagine it's just like, I can't really see them. Like just blinded.
Freaking Gandalf the White showing up for the first time.
Yeah. If you would roll a 5, a bath could grant a creature spider climb for 24 hours. The role play to figure out that this is what happened would be hilarious. Because like I'm imagining you go to a hot spring, your group sits in this hot spring for a little while, they get out of the tub, and then for some like I just trying to figure out how they would know that happened to them. Like, do they just randomly try to climb walls every once in a while, or like would you as a DM tell them that that's what happened? Like
I'd make the bottom of their feet a little sticky for no reason.
Fair
but
enough.
Only this one character. Like, what the fuck is this?
Oh Lord.
Wait, would you make the Enchanted Spring have different effects for everybody that got in it?
Oh, I
think it
absolutely would. And they'd all be movement effects. So like this person has spider climb, this person can swim, this person can fly, and this poor bastard weighs 3 times as much as normal. Gravity is too intense and they can only crawl.
Love it.
Wouldn't they just drown in the spring then?
Probably.
Well, if it happens to Dan's character.
Absolutely. Speaking of happening to Dan's character, I think this last one's going to be really funny. If you roll a 10, bathing in it can cause the creature's voice to turn evil sounding and sinister for 24 hours and shifts them to having advantage on intimidation checks, but then it has disadvantage on deception and persuasion checks.
That's beautiful.
That's
Yeah,
great.
I thought that one was really funny. But I would do that one if you drank it. Like that's how, like, if they decided to take a cup of water, take a sip from it, I wouldn't do the bait. Like this one would be if you drank it. I feel like it would change how you sound.
Or if you inhale the mists off a waterfall
Yeah.
too. Like, but I
Okay,
think
yeah.
you're right. Like it's got to hit your throat, right?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Adam, do you have any inspirations for how you'd use this?
Not necessarily an inspiration, more of a DM tip. You're gonna do this once, and they're gonna think it's cool. You do it a second time, they're never gonna drink water, go near water again, right?
Especially if it's a bad effect. Yeah.
Yeah. Use it sparingly.
Yeah.
Also, be prepared for when they want to fucking bottle it.
Yep.
Yeah, it does mention that, right? Like you have to have a special kind of bottle
Yeah.
for it, otherwise it loses its effect.
Yeah. So, and I would even say that even if it does have the effect, it'd be like, yeah, you bottle it. It's gonna be potent for 24 hour, 1d4 days, and then it will dissipate and become regular water, right? Especially if removed from its zone. Like, that's kind of how I would play it. But yeah, to your point, Adam, I think this would just be like a fun, like I would make it very hyper specific. You have gone to a enchanted magical water spring, and that is what we are here to do. Again, to take away them having fear of doors and water and puddles, you know?
Yeah.
Like you don't want to give your characters, your actual players trauma. You know what I mean? Like,
Well,
but it'd be a good like stopping point. And again, one of those like palate cleansers or refreshers, especially if it's going to be, you want to use some of the better good effects.
Yeah.
And just give them a bit of a breather, right?
Okay. So would you use this as something they find as opposed to, let's say, a quest item or a quest find? Like, would they come across it in a forest, or are they going to be told, hey, there's a magical spring, you should go find it?
It depends. Honestly, if it's out in the wilderness on the material plane, they've got to go find the unicorn. It will be by the enchanted spring, right? And that's one of their clues. But if they're in the Feywild, they just run into this shit.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense. Megan, how about you?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, honestly, it'd be either or. I feel like it would be a known tale that there's an enchanted spring somewhere, but their ability to come across it is like no one knows where it is, so they may never find it, kind of thing.
Okay.
And so like when they find it, it's gonna be something a little bit more enticing because they've heard about it and they knew it existed, and they're gonna think it's special that they found it, as opposed to just like stumbling across it. Yeah, that's how I would do it. Give them a nugget that something exists, but if they find it, they find it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, you know.
Adam, what do you got?
That's me. All right, so emotional echoes. Now, this one is probably one of my favorite things. It's going to be one of the hardest to describe and put into your game as well, without really getting heavy on the narrative, the exposition here. Emotional echoes are when someone feels something so strongly that it imprints the environment around them. There was a theory in real life that hauntings aren't actually real. They're not ghosts. It's not spirits. It's just energies. And when you see a manifestation or an apparition of some kind, what you're actually seeing is an emotional echo of a person that lived here, especially if that was the strong emotion they felt just when they died. Like you would hear, that's why we hear screams in haunted houses, like disembodied moans and shit, because these are the emotional reactions to horrible things that have happened to them just as they died. But emotional echoes can be for anyone. They don't have to have died necessarily. They just felt something so strongly, or there were enough people that felt something so strongly in this area that there was an event that happened. And now when you go there and you show any sort of or any level of the same emotion, you've got to roll a DC 16 against a suggestion spell, and on a failure you succumb to an act that is associated with that emotion. They give us 8 examples of strong emotions, and I'm going to roll for them for each of us in a second here. But the idea is that when your player says, oh, you know what, I laughed, that was pretty funny, and they manage to get like happiness or something, like that's the thing here, they might not be able to stop laughing for the next 2d10 minutes or something, right? So it's this kind of uncontrollable emotional response that characters or creatures will have in this area because it was such an overwhelming emotion whenever it happened in the past. So there are 8 examples. Didn't want to go through all of them because it's a bit of a list, but we haven't started with Kyle yet. So Kyle first. That's 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hatred. This appears in volcanic regions and provokes creatures to scream and destroy things. That's the example that they give, just because of the eruptions. Like, the environment is thematically echoing what's going on as well, right? So there's well, here, I'll give you another example. Megan.
Yeah.
You got a 5. Inspiration. This appears around memorials or natural wonders, causing creatures to create works of art on the spot and obsess over them.
That's nice. I like that for me.
But you'll see how it's not just the emotional reaction of the creatures, it's also specifically tied to
A space.
the environment as
Yeah.
well. So
Yeah.
for me, I rolled a 1, which is boldness. Oh, that tracks. Fuck. Appears in battlefields and echoing canyons, encouraging creatures to shout hidden truths and act out their greatest victories. So the list includes boldness, doubt, fear, hatred, inspiration, joy, love, and sorrow. But there are so many more emotions than that, right? And you can, as a dungeon master, when you get something that you feel is a particularly evocative sight, then you can tie an event that happened in the past, and then what happens if your players end up feeling those emotions here. And then you build encounters to try to trigger that. So
Yeah. I was thinking I would do a if you were to go to like an old Coliseum or like where gladiator battles occurred, like there'd be so many different emotions there. So like you're standing in the stands, but you feel like the excitement and the rush and you just feel like an overwhelming, like, feeling of just wanting to be in a crowd. I don't know how to explain that. But then if you
Your
go down
heart
into
speeds up.
yeah,
Right.
like almost like an anxious reaction. But then if you go down to the pits where the fights happened, you're going to shift to, well, now I want to fight, right? Like you have an overwhelming urge to, and not to fight out of rage, but to fight out of pride. I almost would feel the emotion that you would feel being there would be the prideful feeling of being in battle. Yeah.
Yeah. Or scared right before someone
Yeah, or
dies
like
or something like that.
the fear of it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like this is a great narrative tool, but not so much as, I don't know.
this is what I mean. Like, it's going to be the hardest one to put into your campaign of all the ones we've talked about so far, because it's not something you're going to stumble upon. It's something that is clearly plotted out, and we've got to design this as DMs to actually pop off, to have a narrative moment, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I see this in like a dream sequence or, something where you're reliving someone's memory almost.
They do this in the House of Lament a lot. It doesn't trigger that, like, when you feel sadness, they feel sadness or whatever that. It's instead like you walk into areas and you immediately get a vision of something that happened in the past.
Yeah.
Like, they do that all the way through the Dragonlance, Shadow of the Dragon Queen as well, where there are some areas where you go and you can see cutscenes and flashbacks to what happened here in the past. But that's very on the nose. And I like this because it's a little bit more subtle, and it forces the players to roll saves against being forced to act almost as if the environment is charming them. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. My mind immediately for this went to something like incredibly dark, right? Like you're standing at a high cliff face and all of a sudden you feel like the urge to jump, or, it's kind of La Pelle du Vide kind of thing, right? Where you're driving and you're like, what if I just cruise over into the other lane or something like that?
Your intrusive thoughts get in there. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Like what if I floor it and don't hit the brake in time? Right. Like, yeah.
Or, the suicide forest in Japan. That's what I kind of associate with this.
We deserved a better movie and documentary about that than we got.
That was pretty weak, hey?
Yeah. But yes, I feel that. All right.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to round 4. Maybe something a little more upbeat than that last
We're
sentence.
just doom and gloom today from The Hangover. 16 for me.
10.
7. All right, Megan.
Blessings. I'm going to talk about primal fruit.
I have a question.
Shoot.
What?
Fruits.
Name of my sex tape.
I know, hey?
Primal fruit?
Yeah.
Oh Lord. So in lands ripe with magical creatures doing magical things, obviously eventually magical fruits and other edible creations will start to naturally grow, of course. So this could be a wizard developing spell components or simply magical land that had a strong event occur. The land may eventually muster some what is called primal fruits. There are some special rules to the fruits themselves. So we'll go over those first before some of the options of what the fruit does. So the magical plant can create 1d6 fruits every week. Primal fruit, once picked, is only good for 1 week, so it does eventually dissipate its magical capabilities. It can be simply eaten, or it can be made into juices, or even cooked with a chef in a meal. But once it's consumed, there is, of course, the random effect table. So like no matter what consumption process you use, the magic is going to pop off. It's important to realize that even if an identify spell is used to determine what the fruit is, you can learn from an identify spell what the benefit is, but you will not find out any curses or side effects. So that's important to note for DMs. So this is a D8 table for possible effects of some of the fruits that, can be eaten, and a couple of my favorites, of course. If you roll a 2, a creature will gain advantage on skill checks, saves, and attack rolls using strength for 1 hour. However, the side effect is receiving 1 point of exhaustion once it wears off.
Oof.
Yeah. So I'm assuming your group will eat it, feel super strong, get super stoked, pick a few, and then all of a sudden are exhausted when they start traveling.
Yeah.
If you roll a 4,
I feel after barbecue.
and you gotta get out of that carb coma. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do not swim for the next hour.
Yeah, 100%. If you happen to roll a 4, a creature's skin will feel prickly. For 1 hour, they get resistance to 1 damage type chosen by the DM with no side effect. So I thought that was cool. Yeah. If you roll a 7, the creature won't need food, drink, or sleep for 1d4 days. You also cannot be put to sleep by magical means. However, their dreams impose on their wakened thoughts, which gives them disadvantage on wisdom saves. So that was just really interesting. Basically being like, yeah, you don't need to eat, sleep, or drink or whatever, but your brain, which requires sleep, is going to still try and make dreams and your intrusive thoughts a little bit more rampant, is kind of how I see that.
Yeah.
See, I would fuck with that a little bit more. I'm not even going to impose disadvantage on perception checks. You're just going to see things that aren't there.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to fuck with you a little bit with this one.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. That one feels like it'd be hard to narrate, I guess.
You can say in the corner of your eye, you see someone who is dead and gone, right? Like you see your dog from your childhood dog in the corner, or
yeah.
So there's this,
drug psychosis.
Drug psychosis.
There's this phenomenon that I have succumbed to more than once, which comes from overtired. I have been absolutely suffering from insomnia for the majority of my life. And when I do sleep, I sleep hard. But I'm up for days sometimes. And one of the things that I have noticed is when it's time for me to finally go to bed, it's because I start to hear someone call my name, but I've been awake for 2.5 days, and I will hear Adam, and it's specifically a person's voice, like someone that I know, usually my dad's voice. Now, my dad died 3 years ago, so it's really disconcerting now, but it's been like this since I was 14. I would hear him call my name, and I'd be like, what, is he here? No? Okay, weird. That is an indicator that I'm going to fall asleep very fucking quickly, no matter what I'm in the middle of doing. So it's that kind of thing that I feel should be happening. That out of the corner of your eye, you see somebody running, and you turn to look, and there's nobody there. It's like that highway hallucinations when you're driving and you're tired. You suddenly just start to see every road sign or barrier looks like there's a person standing there.
Yeah.
You do a double take, and it's not. It's just your mind is just creating shit out of shapes.
Yeah. I have people who know me in real life know I'm a vivid dreamer. I talk about my dreams all the time. But one of the hardest parts of being a vivid dreamer, and I hope the audience out there can actually identify with this, I will wake up feeling like I have not slept because I feel like my brain was on. And so I don't necessarily suffer from insomnia the way that you do, Adam, but I do have waking dreams as well, which is basically what this is almost describing. And the most recent one was being in my own house, and I was all of a sudden overwhelmed with the feeling that there were people in my house, even though that there weren't. It was just same thing. I'll hear someone say my name, and the internet's gonna be Megan, you're crazy. I'm like, no, it's just my brain doing weird stuff because it's tired. You know what I mean? But you get overwhelmed with the kind of those emotional echoes where a feeling will come on and your brain will fill in the gaps, and all of a sudden you start hearing or seeing it as if it were real. And I call them woken dreams, but yeah. One
of these days I'd love to learn how to lucid dream.
It takes time.
It does.
I've read up on it. It sounds amazing.
I was taught how to do it accidentally.
Oh.
When I was a kid, I had night terrors when I was a kid. So my parents put me in sleep therapy. And a lot of it came down to doing dream journaling and doing other things. So I spent a lot of my childhood very focused on dreams and how they work and how my body reacts to them and how to determine what's real and what's fake. and like learned all those tips and tricks and how to do it while you're in your dream world. And so now now it's just a thing that I do. And it just because as a kid, I was taught it young. And so now it's just a part of how my brain structure works.
That's
So,
cool.
yeah.
I'm assuming you don't suffer from sleep paralysis then.
I've had it 4 times in my life.
That's horrible.
And I remember every single one like it's yesterday.
Yeah, I had it
Yeah.
twice, but I was much, much younger and terrifying.
The last one I had was like 4 months ago.
Ugh.
Yeah. It happens. If anybody wants to
Anyway.
talk about dreams, reach out. I talk about them a lot.
Primal fruit though.
Primal fruits. I was reminded, okay, talking about primal fruits, Adam, I was reminded of because we did have special like blueberries when you were talking about that oasis that we ran into in the middle of the desert. There was the blue fruit.
Yep.
That we carried. Did you take that inspiration from here? Or did you find that somewhere else?
No, it was actually a take on something as a throwback because in the previous campaigns, but in this world, Casey's character ended up planting fruit, planting a bunch of seeds. They ran across magical seeds. I didn't know what the seeds did when I gave them. Like it was rolled on a random table. So I hadn't made that up yet. But the idea was she was given like 100 seeds and each one of them grew a tree overnight. That tree will last for exactly 100 years and every day produce up to, I think it was 10 melons hanging from the tree. Each one of these melons will sustain one person for 1 day's worth of food. They're sweet, they're delicious, and they're great. So, and it was my way of not having to worry about rations in my campaign. But then I just keep thinking there's magical food, that fruit and grains and shit growing all over, right? So you guys have run into magical flowers and magical plants, and there's always some sort of effect to them. If you come across something unique, then you can be pretty certain there's going to be something cool that happens, although it is sometimes detrimental as well. So
Cool. Yeah, I was thinking about using these as mostly as a quest reward. But then I also thought about a kind of a fun one. So you come and you find an old man standing at the bottom of a valley at the base of like a really tall, narrow spar of rock. And there's basically a tree at the top. And he goes, "Hey, I need you to go up there and I need you to get me this specific piece of fruit." But it's really dangerous. It's a great exploration pillar, right? Like, how are they going to find their way up? I tried to definitely avoid them flying to get around it.
mm-hmm.
Right? I would have a monster hiding inside. I might have it like eat a Pegasus just to kind of illustrate the point.
Yeah.
But then when they get out there, they find this tree and it's got all these kinds of fruit on it, right? Like they all look
different
slightly
kinds.
different.
Yeah.
And he goes, "I need you to get me this one." And then what are they going to do? Like, what are they going to eat? Are they going to eat the same one that he does? Because the idea is that it's fruit of youth, so they come back down and they give it to him and he comes back to like a regular man, but if they eat it, it'll take them too far back, so they'll be like a child again.
Cool.
And then let them try to figure out something like that.
That's cool.
I also like it as a reward because the stuff on this table is far more potent than the stuff that I was doing with the fruit. So mine was like background noise, magic items that you can use or not, doesn't matter. But this stuff, there's such a strong positive aspect to every one of the 8 options. And there's a couple of drawbacks like the exhaustion thing, right? But it definitely feels like a reward that you could hand out. Like there's 8 different colored berries growing on the tree, right? You have 4 player characters. They can each pick one. What color do you want?
Yeah.
Right. And then
like
they
that.
all get a different thing that they can use as long as they use it within a certain amount of time, right? Like that's fun. That's memorable. It's interesting and it's useful.
I also feel like this could be something a hag has by her shack.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or also a gin.
Yeah. But those ones would be a lot more. For the hag one, it would definitely be a 2-edged sword, right? Like you get something cool, but then also something fucking terrible. Like you would lose one of your hands. It would rot off, but you would get some insane boon.
Or it's just the like I'm a hag. I need you to go get this thing for me, and then when they're done, you can pick one of my fruits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's thanks.
Yeah.
Oh man. I get to see the barbarian be like, "I expected more than a piece of fruit, but thank you." And like the wizard or whoever like knows what it is be like, "Be grateful." Amazing.
I think I was next on this.
Yes. I
You
believe so.
were.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So My next one is Unearthly Roads. This one takes a little bit of wrapping your brain around because I don't think it's explained very well in the book. But think of it like this. There are passages of great magic that are like thin spots between worlds where two connected gates appear, but there's like a highway between them. So it's kind of like a wormhole you travel through and not just a portal you step through. If you take one of these passages, it's like entering a tunnel that's infused with the essence of a plane that it's worming through, because you would step through this gate and it actually takes you through a tunnel through a different plane to get somewhere a lot faster. You can actually travel 21 miles in the span of time it would normally take to travel 1 mile. You can see what's going on through the walls of this tunnel, but it's blurry and indistinct, and the details are of the other plane that you're passing through. But the creatures and the landmarks and whatnot can't be made out through the walls of this tunnel. You just kind of get the general impression of, like, if you're walking through one of these unearthly roads that goes through the Shadowfell, you're going to see it's dark, it's dreary, it's misty, it's rainy. There's forested areas or whatnot, but you're not going to see Strahd standing there looking at you, right? You're not going to be able to see the village of Barovia. You're going to have general idea of small drab buildings around, right? As opposed to going through the Feywild, which is bright and energetic, but you're not going to be able to see the specific Fey creatures there. Sometimes specific criteria needs to be met in order to access these unearthly roads. Like, it has to be an anniversary of an event or something like that. There are 6 examples of these specific criteria, and they're all called Unearthly Road Keys. So I'm going to roll a d6 because they've got some interesting criteria here for you to be able to access this. Let's say, Megan, that was a 5 for you. You have to permanently sacrifice a memory of joy in order to be able to access this.
Ugh. Let me try and find one for you.
Stay tuned next
dreams
week when we
count?
sit down and have therapy with Megan. Kyle, a 2 for you. You have to spill a pint of humanoid blood.
Nice.
Easy.
Never
leave home without it.
And then I rolled a 4 for myself. I would have to be wearing the regalia of a lost royal dynasty in order to walk through this gate.
Interesting.
Right? There are some neat examples there, but like, you could come up with whatever you want to be the criteria, whatever key that you want it to be. And I mean, then you have a quest just sitting there waiting for you.
Yeah. Like,
Right.
it's like a build your own small side quest in your big campaign, right?
Yeah. And as much as it's like, 21 miles in the span of time it takes to travel through 1 mile normally, I would have, like, there's a kingdom that's 2,000 miles away, but you can travel through this road for 2 days and get there.
Yeah.
Right? Or however that math breaks. I did not do the math on that, but however it breaks down, right? So, like, you can have these incredibly long distances, and the only thing you need to do is go find you've got to find the perfect silver orb to throw through an ancient archway, and then this gate will appear. But that orb is in the haunted keep over there. Go get it, right?
Mhm.
So that's far more interesting a way to get across a map than getting caught I'm on a ship, I'm on a train, I'm on horseback, and we're just going to hand wave a handful of random encounters at you, right?
Yeah, interesting. I like these a lot. I think
Yeah.
they're really cool. I also kind of imagine this is what it would be like taking any of the portals in Sigil, right? This is what you're coming out of.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree. I think so.
And honestly, I like the idea of playing around with it in terms of, depending on what kind of portal you're going through, maybe time works differently, right? Maybe if you take the right one, you end up before you even entered it as well.
Yeah. Or maybe you've got to find a different portal to get back, because it takes 21 miles in the span of the time it takes to do 1 mile this way, but it's the reverse going back,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You got to go 21 miles to go for 1 mile, right? Like, so you need a different passageway back, and maybe you've got to cross the map a few times to get close to getting back to where you started from.
Mhm.
Cool. I like that. Yeah. Or you got this quest, you got to go deal with the consequences of this thing that happened. You go into this tunnel, and then you come out and you find out that thing hasn't actually happened yet, what is your party going to do now?
Oh, that's
Yeah.
cool.
Time
Yeah.
warp. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
All right. I guess we're moving on to me. Magic
Mhm.
mushrooms.
Ending on a high point.
Yeah. So, mushrooms, friend or foe? The eternal question. Some are edible, some are poisonous, some have medicinal uses, and still more have other qualities. Particularly ones that grow in the Underdark or the Feywild, where they become infused with the area's magic. Characters proficient in medicine, nature, or survival skills might have some knowledge on the subject of fungi, especially the magical kind, since beneficial effects can save lives or bestow unique powers. But there are untold amounts of variance out there, right? Like nobody's going to be able to know all the mushrooms that exist. So what happens if you run into some of these? Well, you get a nifty little D10 table where some of the effects include being subjected to enlarge or reduce with a 50% chance of either taking effect, losing the ability to speak and only be able to make chicken noises, while gaining the ability to speak and understand chickens. This lasts until a remove curse is cast on the subject, which I like that little last tidbit. Or having mist pour out of your eyes and ears, acting as the fog cloud spell for 1 hour, centered on whoever consumed the mushroom. So
That chicken one is so weirdly specific.
Yeah.
It's like, it's because it's somebody's like mushroom high experience. Like I need to put this in a book somewhere so that other people can experience this as well. You know, like I feel like they sat around the table and said, "What was your last high experience?" And let's put this on a table. Like,
No. They put magic mushrooms on the table and said, "Okay, everybody
Yeah.
go. We'll write it down afterwards."
I think for this very small minuscule thing, it was probably like a 3-day venture. You know what I mean? Like,
I noticed none of this is melt into your chair and talk to the devil. So they must have been good mushrooms.
yeah, mine is just hallucinating that I'm at work. It's always that I'm at work, and I don't know.
That is the saddest
What?
shit
Isn't it?
I have
Yeah.
ever heard.
Yeah.
100%. Like, it's anytime I've ever this is gonna be on the internet now. Anytime I've done a hallucinogen, it has always been that I've been at work, always.
Weird.
And like this was back when I worked in retail, so it was high stress and like high anxiety, and
That's
I
why.
hated it.
Yeah.
I hate it to this day. Now I won't do hallucinogens anymore because all I do is think about work.
Oh, that's awful. I
It's
get like
sad.
I get really like crazy high emotions. Like I feel stuff so much harder than I do when I'm like sober. So
hyper
honestly,
sad, Kyle.
Yeah. Well, no, I like to watch heartwarming sad movies because I will bawl my fucking eyes out. And like, you know, sometimes you just need a good cry and it fucking works.
It's true. It's true.
No, for me, I become obsessed with energy. Like I'm very, very concerned about electricity and light that is being given off of things. And I also need to make sure that the right number of things still exist. For example, if there is a cat in the house, I will go, if one cat, I will count that cat over and over and over again to make sure there's not 2 cats in the house.
One cat.
What would you do if what would you do if you did count a second cat? Would you like lose your mind?
Yes.
Like-
Speaking from experience, very much yes.
Indeed.
I'm all for magic mushroom effects. It's going to be a good shit and giggle at the table.
Especially with the right party, it's going to be a good time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. This is really no different than the primal fruit, except it's a little bit like the effects are different, but it is just another random table of shit that you eat.
Yeah.
Right.
I guess the situation is it's more area specific, right? Like primal fruit is if you have a magic user, this is like, oh, you want something kooky to have in your Feywild adventure? Or...
Yeah.
Do you guys have any inspirations for how you'd use it?
If you want to do some sort of major divination ritual, you want to see back in time to see a thing. If you want to communicate across the cosmos to a ship that's spell jamming, there might be magic mushrooms involved, and you would also get one of these side effects. But it would be, this isn't the reason that you take the mushrooms, it's the side effect of it. You put up with this for the next little while, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, it's definitely like a spell component that's used in some kind of a like casting ritual or a sacrifice or something like that.
Something that involves like perception opening up and communication with the world opening up in some way, right?
Like if someone who doesn't have the scry spell is trying to scry or like
Exactly,
something
yeah.
like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I feel that.
Mine is totally different, and I feel like our respective experiences doing magic mushrooms clearly affected our ideas for this. Because mine was just like you need the help of a crazy sport druid, but to get his help, he makes you play Russian roulette with these mushrooms. So he just goes, "Here you go, lay them all out," and he makes your entire party take some, and then they all have to roll on the table to see what effects they get.
And meanwhile, Megan's is like, and now you have to go work in the general store.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, you have to go to work. At one point, I think I was talking and trying to fix a printer, and my people that were with me were like, "What are you doing?" I'm fixing the printer. I don't know what your problem is.
What does it mean? Load table tray 3. Fuck.
I'm so embarrassed that that was my third eye opening wide. Megan, you're at work.
Yeah.
You might need to unclench that muscle, Megan, and not worry about work so much.
Have you tried turning your brain off and on again?
All the time. My reset mode isn't any better.
Oh shit, we gotta restart Megan in safe mode.
Oh Lord. So good.
All right, before we accidentally cross any more magical boundaries, let's hunker down for a little info break.
If you've been inspired by the conversation in this episode, please feel free to reach out and share your creativity and ideas with us and the rest of the community. You can reach us on Facebook and Instagram, or on our subreddit r/it'samimic. Also, if you're feeling particularly generous, please follow and subscribe and leave us positive reviews, likes and comments. Engagement like that help us pop up on search engines and keep this show running.
All right, so the last things that don't really fit with the other ones that we've talked about so far are mimic colonies. And I'm very excited to talk about this for obvious reasons. But we have run into mimic colonies in the past before there was codified rules for it, and it was terrifying for the players. When an entire village came to life, then turned into a working ship and chased them across a small inland sea. So the idea with mimic colonies are, and I'm assuming everyone knows what a mimic is. If you don't, what are you doing listening to this episode? But it doesn't happen often. But sometimes mimics can gain awareness beyond the norm and even start to learn how to speak and communicate. Megan knows this because you guys ran into a couple of sentient mimics that were hanging out with you guys named Phil and Phyllis.
They were so fun.
Yeah. Even rarer, though, sometimes a group of mimics will come together to make a colony. This shouldn't happen often, but like once every other campaign, maybe. When this happens, an unpopulated but highly detailed village will appear out of nowhere overnight, but it's actually a large group of intelligent, telepathic mimics working together. When this happens, all mimics within 10 miles of the colony can communicate telepathically with any creature that's within 120 feet of it, and any mimic offspring that are born gain permanent telepathy. We don't get any information on how they're born or what that is like, but I assume this slurping. Mimic colonies aren't stupid. If they think that they're going to be defeated or they're not going to be able to eat the travelers or the people that are unlucky enough to stumble upon them, then they will attempt to ensure their survival by bargaining, negotiating, offering treasure from previous victims, or even offering one of their young as tribute, and then fucking off and trying this again somewhere else. There's even a CR0 juvenile mimic stat block on page 167, so your players can have a pet mimic.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
And that's it. That's the whole thing. Otherwise, you're just fighting lots and lots of telepathic, intelligent mimics if a colony comes to life.
Yeah, I honestly like the art in the book for it because it looks like it's like a rescue farm. You know, like this lady is just taking in poor orphaned mimics and then giving them a chance to rehab.
It's like having the Ditto farm or something like that from like Pokemon. It's just so cute.
I like the idea of the mimic colony being friendly, but I also love it being hostile.
Yeah, it's pretty fun as hostile. I think I would definitely play it as friendly though, just because I don't know, it's adorable. Also, I think mimics reproduce through mitosis.
I would hope so,
but
But yeah, that's what we have for juvenile mimics.
It's very cute.
Yep. There's also something that's a little sidebar in Tasha's called Awaken Anything. And I'm going to read from it directly, the whole thing. It's a little long, so bear with me here. But there are a lot of awakened creatures, and we're going to talk about that in another episode. But there's also, while we're talking about mimic colonies, we should discuss the idea of items that have been awoken. Legends are filled with natural forces and mundane objects that take on humanoid characteristics to guide or confound heroes. Statues that sing, animals that whisper secrets, clouds that speak their mind. When monsters like elementals, Galabdur, and treants represent natural forces brought to life, not every chatty rock or sagacious stream needs a stat block. Perhaps your adventures take a party to a land where plants speak freely, or a cursed realm where petrified souls beg for help. Don't feel restricted by the options in the monster manual or by the limitations of the animal or the limitations of the animate object spell should you want to breathe extra life into your story. Filling a witch's readout with murmuring relics, a fey forest with eavesdropping vegetation, or a sky god's temple with avian choirs makes a place especially memorable. Spells such as Animate Object, Awaken, Speak with Animals, Speak with Plants, and the like provide guidance on how to bring commonplace creatures and objects to life. And I wanted to bring this up because whether it's a haunted area, or it's an enchanted area, or it's a mirror zone, or there's unraveling magic effects, whatever it is, there should be weird shit like this around.
Yeah. It just feels like a nice little additive to any of the options, right?
Yeah, and so it's just this little sidebar that would be easy to skip, but it's worth bringing up in this conversation to say, hey, don't be afraid to throw in talking animals or talking items or disembodied voices or anything else for a role-playing aspect to what's clearly really cool environmental exploration encounters.
Yeah. It helps you pad out stuff where you might be a little stuck in terms of, you want to flesh it out, make it a little more vibrant, I guess.
Yeah, or if they're having trouble understanding what this new status quo is, right? Then you can have a squirrel walk up to them and start talking, or, the inkwell starts, the quill comes up and starts writing in the air and magical words pop up and like.
I'm just thinking Beauty and the Beast castle now with like Mrs. Potts and Chip and
absolutely.
Yeah. Very cute. All right, anyway, that's all for this part of our discussion on the magical environments from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. Please take a second to engage with a like, follow, comment, and review to help push our engagement. And don't forget to subscribe to find future inspirations for your campaigns.
If you'd like to support us, we have a store with some merch and a donate button on our website at www.itsamimic.com, as well as a Patreon. This episode and others can also be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and most other podcast apps. Thanks for listening to It's a Mimic, where you never know what you're going to get.
This has been an It's a Mimic production. Please check the show notes for this episode to see links, time codes, and credits, and don't forget to reach out and share your own inspirations.
Welcome back to It's a Mimic, where you never know what you're going to get. Today, we're continuing our discussion on DM tips in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition.
Aren't I DM 1?
Are you DM 1?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet. Less talking for me. Fuck. Take it away, Kyle.
Just disappears. It's gonna wheel away. For regional effects, I'm almost there, guys.
We'll get there together, by God. Kyle's going to drag us across the finish line.
Okay. I'm so mad I went first because I did not reread my notes. And I'm like, what did I mean when I wrote that?
I felt the same way doing my intro. I was like, what is... No, I'll just skip that word.
Oh, Lord. Anyways, okay.
Adam, no one wants to see your crotch.
Gentlemen.
Not the time or place.
This is not a visual platform. Save that
Yeah.
for the OnlyFans, okay?
For It's a Mimic, it's the only dance.
Yeah.
The only dance. Oh Lord. So these areas were magical. I'm gonna start again because fuck me, you know.
I'm going to go have a shower and a 3-hour nap.
Yeah, I'm gonna go drink a Gatorade and take a shower.
Oh, Gatorade.
Yeah. Katie
Yeah.
left some in my fridge from the last weekend. And so I messaged her this morning and I'm like, thanks for leaving these in my fridge. It's been a lifesaver.
I have so much booze left over in my fridge. So much that I've got to pull like 80% of it out so I can fit fucking food in there.
Nah, priorities, BB,
Yeah.
priorities.
The point
Better
is,
get drinking.
the next handful of times you guys come over to record anything,
I'm not bringing anything. I'm going to drink your booze.
please, fucking please.
Deal.
Kyle, did you say you laid off drinking for a bit?
Well, no, I just cut back my drinking. So I also just don't drink at home anymore and only drink sometimes when I go out. I've since September, I think I've drank less than 24 times.
Mm.
That's all right.
So
Yeah, not drinking at home, it was the thing that made a world of difference for me. I cut way back. I was starting to get problematic for a while.
yeah, it was
What
a little
do you
bit that.
mean? Crazy.
All right, I'm going to save this episode. Thank you
All right.
and enjoy your horrible Sundays.
Okay,
All
bye.
Bye.
Okay, see you next time.